Hey guys, this is Steven here with another video on how to play some logic puzzles. This one's called Statue Park. Rules state that there's a bank of shapes given that have to fit within the grid, and you use each shape at least once unless stated otherwise. Shapes may be rotated or reflected, and no two shapes may overlap orthogonally. They might not be adjacent to one another up or down. They can connect diagonally, however. And all of the space that's not occupied by shapes must be connected. So you can't isolate any cells. And then any of the X marks or black circles have to be overlaid by a shape. So the shapes have to go over those marks, whereas the white circles cannot contain a shape. So what I mean by that is I can't put, an L shape in here like that because it's over one of these circles. If it has an X again, you have to have a shape that goes over that somehow. So that's it for the rules. What I'm going to go ahead and do is try to solve this puzzle for you guys and share some common tips or tricks that'll hopefully make it easier for you to solve them yourselves in the future. Now, usually what they do is they give you the tetraminos, like the Tetris shapes, or pentaminoes. In this case, it's an easier puzzle, so we're just given the Tetris shapes. What I try to do first is I look to see where the eye shape can go, as it's one of the most restricted shapes. So if we think about it, the eye cannot go on any of these X's. Because if you think about it, if an eye goes like that, it's going to make it so that it's orthogonally adjacent to this other X, right? Same thing if we go in the other direction. So no matter how you position the eye, it can't go on one of these two. It can't go on this one either, because what's going to happen is no matter what shape you put over this X here, it's going to be touching this one here. And then if we think about this X, it can't go left, there's not enough space. Can't go right because it would be orthogonally adjacent to this X here. And if it goes up, well, maybe it could go up. But then the problem is, what shape do you put on this X? I suppose you could do an L like that, but let's say we do that. Let's say we fill those in. What we've done now is we've isolated these white cells, and we can't do that, right? These white cells have to all be orthogonally connected with one another. So what happens is the L can't go here either. So the only place the L can go on this grid is over this X. There's not enough space anywhere else. On the bigger grids, you might be able to fit it somewhere, right? So you could fit a shape somewhere where there's no X's, right? Like a T could go there. But usually what you try to focus on first are the places that you have to put a shape. So I know an eye shape is going to have to go here. Now it can't come all the way down. This can't be the tip-top cell. So we know it's got to be at least these three cells. The fourth one can be here or up there. We don't know that yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in those three for the time being and come back to that. Now the next tip I would say is look for the black circles or the X marks that are constrained, and in such a way that they limit the shapes that can be placed on top of it. So if we look at this X here, right, you can't have, we've already established you can't have an I here, right, so that eliminates that. You can't have an L anywhere because you're going to basically be touching this other X, right, no matter how you put that L. So no L, no I. And if we think about an S, we're going to be touching this other X, and we're going to be adjacent to that, right? However, which way I do it. So no L, no I, no S. Now a T could go in like this, and that's fine because you're diagonal to this other X, or the T can go like that. So a T works, and an O works as well, right? You could have it be a square there. So I know in any of those situations, these two X's is going to be part of the same shape, right? So we can color those in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it as a T and an O, because I know it's going to be one of those two. Okay, and I'll come back to that and see if we can figure out the rest later. Now this top X, because it's in the corner, is also really constrained. Can't do an L in either way because you would run into one of these O's. So L doesn't work, an I doesn't work, there's not enough space. A T doesn't work either. There's no way to put a T here. You're off the grid. So that only leaves us with an S, which would work like that, or an S would work like that. So that's fine. Or a square. And so we know that this is going to be an S or an O shape, or square shape, whatever you want to call it. And either way we do it, right? We could do an S like that, or a square. This cell right here is going to be a part of it as well. So we can actually highlight those two, knowing that these two are going to be connected. Now, if we move down here, think about what can be this shape on this X. Can't be an S, right? Because that would touch this X here. Can't be an S over there because it would touch that other S. No matter how you position it, that S is not going to fit in because it's always going to be orthogonally adjacent to one of these X's over here. So this is not an S. It can't be an O because if it's an O like that, let's say it's an O, that traps these two white cells. It isolates those, right? In the same situation here, if we make an O that way, it's going to isolate these because there's going to be a shape on this X. So we know it can't be an O, and it can't be an I. We've already established that, right? So this has to be either an L would work, right? An L could be like that, or an L could be like that. A T could work like this. Now a T wouldn't be able to work this way. You'd trap these three cells, and you wouldn't be able to do a T that way because you'd trap those cells. So what I'm seeing is the T like that, or an L with the leg on this side or that side. Either way, these two cells are going to be part of the same shape, right? And that's going to be an L or a T. So that's a good start. We've been able to limit it down. This is the last piece here. If you think about it, we need to fit 5 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to be the 5th piece. So we know, for instance, a T can't be up here in open space. Even though it would fit, you can only do 1 of each shape. And we've already got 4 out of the 5. The 5th one needs to go here. If we think about what can go here, and a square or an O can't, right? That would isolate these cells. And if it goes that way, you're going to be adjacent here. So O doesn't work. What about an S? Well, the S can't go this way, can't come down. If it goes up like that, it's going to be touching that one. Now, if we do an S like this, that might work, right? That's a possibility. So I think an S might work. What about a T? A T can't work like that. Any which way you do the T with the X in the middle, that won't work. But the X can't be on the left or the top. It can, well, it could go maybe like this. No, because what's going to happen is you're isolating these white cells, right? You've trapped. Let's just draw that in. You can see no matter what shape this takes at the top or at the bottom, you've trapped in these white cells on the right. So you can't have a T like that. Oops. So no T. So this is either going to be an S or an L, right? An L would work. You can have the L like this. So let's look at the S again. So that's the only S that would work, right? We've established the S won't work like any of these other ways. So if we do an S, let's imagine that for a second. If this is a square, that's a T. No, that I don't. let's think about it. So if this is an S, that forces this top one to be an O, which then forces this to be a T. Right? And if that's a T, then that forces this to be an L, which is going to put one up here. So let's imagine that for a second. We color all those in. Now you've isolated these cells here. So in fact, this X cannot be an S. Even though it fits, what it does is it causes a chain reaction, forcing this to be an O, which forces this to then be a T. And if we try to do it this way, let's color those in again. Because this is a T, now this forces this to be an L shape. And how do you fit the L in? You can do it that way, but that isolates this white cell. If you do it that way, you're adjacent to this. If you do it that way, you're touching. And if you do it up like this, any which way the leg goes, you're going to isolate these white cells. So in fact, this is not an S. So this is not an I, not a T, not an S or an O. So this is forced to be an L. That makes this a T, and we've already established the T has to look like that. So let's color that in. That forces this to be an O, because it can't be a T, because you can only have one of each shape, right? So, and this now has to be an S. Now the S could go like that, right? Or what about this way? Actually, so we don't know which way the S goes yet. No, this I though. Let's finish this I. So if we put the last square down here, it's going to isolate this white cell. So it has to come up like that. This L can't go left or right or down. So it has to come up. And if it comes to the right, it isolates these. So it has to come to the left like that. That looks good. And now we know the S can't come down, because then you're trapping these white cells. So the S has to come like that. So that's it. That's one of each shape. We've covered all the required X's in the beginning. The X's were, I think, like that. And that's how you do a statue park puzzle. This is an easier one, just to kind of show you how it works, but a lot of the same strategies still apply. What I would say is when you're doing the harder ones, typically you don't need to shade in an entire shape. Again, as long as you know that certain cells have to be part of the shape and you limit it to one or two shapes, you can, as we've done here, it helps out a lot. So when you're doing those pentomino ones, which are bigger shapes, bigger grids, it's typically harder. You have to know there's certain rare shapes like the I shape, right? The L and the Y, which have 4 cells in a row, or the Z and the W that has 3 cells in a row diagonally. So maybe I'll do another video with a statue park using pentominoes instead of tetraminos. But hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.